Hello guys and welcome to the new video of our Python and API development course. In this video, we will be looking at GET request, query parameters and headers. So we will define our own GET request endpoints. We will define query parameters in this endpoint. We will define headers in this endpoint. In the previous video, you guys looked at a basic fast API Hello World app, and in that we defined two GET request endpoints, which were the default GET request endpoint, which was the base URL, that is just a slash, and another was slash new. So now in today's video, we will see that how we can define query parameters and headers for our GET request. So first thing first, what we should do is we should start our virtual environment, because every dependency is installed in this virtual environment only. So I'll just install this, activate this. So my virtual environment is activated. Now I will run my server, and the server will run on the localhost 8000 port. So I'll just go here, and you can see that it has started. It has said hello fast API world. Now what I can do is I can check that my slash new is working or not. Yeah, it is working, and you can see here. Now let's first start with query parameters. So we already have discussed when we were discussing about APIs that how query parameters are used using GET request. So I will show you that how to define them. So let's just say I'm defining an endpoint which will take my first name and my last name, and then it will process the data, and what it will give me in response, my last name and my first name in reverse order. Okay, so let's just define the path to be slash name. Okay, and I will define a function called name, and now I need two parameters in this. First is first name, second is last name. So first name, okay, it should be a string, right? And last name, it should also be a string. So both are string I have defined here. Okay, so you already know how to define function in Python. So that's what I have did. I have defined a function called name. I have defined two arguments, name and first name, and I have defined that these should be string. So one thing you should remember about query parameters is this, that whenever you are using query parameters, even if you define integer or float or anything else here, they will always be used as a string only. The query parameters will come to the server in string format only, because the server extracts this query parameters from the URL itself, and it is of the type string, so they will always be string even if you define whatever type here. Okay, so now what it needs to return is return, so last name first, last name, and I will just add a space, and then I'll say first name, right? So first name. So this is my particular route. Now we already know that how to call or how to generate a GET request to an endpoint which has query parameter and has two parameters or arguments, first name and last name. So what will it be? First, the base URL. So I'll just copy the base URL. What would be the path? So this is a comment. I'm just telling you the path here. Okay, a name. Okay, my route. Now after this, I need to give the value to these query parameters. A question mark. So my first argument is first name, right? And it should, I now should define the value. This should be equal to Kostu, right? If my name is Kostu Pandey, so it should return Pandey Kostu. Okay, and then I need to define another parameter. So I'll put a and then second argument, which is last name, right? This should have the value as Pandey, right? So this should be my URL. Now I'll just save this. Okay, I'll save this. You can see that if I save this, it recognizes that watch file detected changes in main.py and it's reloading. Okay, and my application startup is complete again. So if I copy this URL and I go back to my server and I put this here, you will see that it's giving Pandey costume. Okay. So what happened was the server went to the slash name path. It saw that it has two arguments to be taken, first name and last name. It encoded or it just read the URL and it found that first name has the value Kaustuv and last name has the value Pandey. Right? Now, what if someone didn't give the one of the parameter? Let's say I don't provide the last name right here and I just provide the first name. It said that required field and value error, it is missing. Why? Because one value is missing. So for this we generally use default values too. So I can say that if someone did not provide the first name, just use hello and okay, and it's a string, so I'll define it in a string. And if someone does not provide me with the last name, just use world. Okay, like this. And if I save this, okay, so application startup complete. Now I'll go here, and now if I do this, it will say world costume because it has taken a default value as world. So these were our query parameters. Now let's see how headers work. Before getting into headers, I need you to understand a very important part of Fast API, which is its documentation. So when we were talking about APIs, I already told you that whenever working with the API, we need to look into the documentation of the API. Now, if we are building our own API, we should have a documentation for our API too. So if we were using any other frameworks like Flask or Django, we need to define our own documentation by ourselves. But as Fast API is a very modern and a very well developed framework, it provides us with our API's documentation. What we can do is I can go to my base URL and just write slash docs here, DOCS. Okay, that means documentation. And if I press enter, it gives me a Swagger UI, a UI for my documentation, which has all the requests that I have made, right? Get, what are their paths, slash new slash name, and what function are they using? Hello, new, and name, right? So how to use it? Just go to any endpoint, press try it out and execute this endpoint. You will see that whatever is the response, the server will provide. So now you don't need to put it into here in the browser and then you to verify how it's working. You have your own Postman kind of interface for your own API. So when we used Postman, it's something like that only. It is used to test our own API endpoints. So this was the second. If you see here, you can see that what URL it is requesting. So this was slash new path. So it requested the base URL and then slash new. Now are our query parameters looking here? See, it has given me an option to add the query parameters, not call the URL by myself. So if I go here and if I write costu and if I just go here and write Pandey and just execute it. See, Pandey Kaustuv, and what was the URL? HTTP our base URL, then slash name, then question mark, first name, Kaustuv, and last name Pandey, right? So this was it. And because it has a right default value, so it's already showing that the default value is hello and default value is world. So if you don't enter any value, it will provide you with this default value. Now let's get into header. How to define our header? First thing first, I need to import header. So I'll import header function from Fast API module. Then I'll do is I'll write app dot get. Now I will implement same functionality but using headers, right? So name, I'll say h, right? Name h. Then what I'll do is def name h, define a function. Now how to define header function? First is same thing, same first name, it's a string, right? Now as I want these to be headers, so what I'll do is I'll put OK, sorry, equal to, and then header and close parenthesis. Then I'll say last name, which will be a string, and so what I have done here is I have told the API that this first name and this last name should be of header methods. Yeah, so they kind of become an object of this method. They kind of become an object of this method, and the API, whenever it has a get request on this path slash name h, it will identify first name and last name in the header, because it will now look for header and it will look for last name and first name in the header. What are headers? We already discussed when we were discussing API, but for your sake, I'll repeat it. Whenever we generate a request, some values can be encapsulated in a header to not show in the URL. So that's the main difference between query parameter and header using. Whenever we use query parameter, our values are exposed in the URL itself. But if we use header, our values will never be exposed in the URL. They will be encapsulated inside the header of the request, right? So now I will return the same thing here. Uh, and I'll say, I'll add something to it, which will be, this is generated, this was generated using headers, header, right? So now I'll save this. Okay, and I'll wait for my application to start up. Yeah, so it has startup completed. I'll go to my Swagger UI. I will refresh it. You can see another get request has been added here, which is name slash name match, and now you will see that it is telling me that first name, which is type of string and is a header, last name a type of string and is header. So now if I want to try it out, I will just write Kaustuv here and I will write Ante here, right? And what I'll do is I'll execute this. You will see it has responded me with Pandey Kaustuv. This was generated using header. Now the main thing to look here is what was the requested URL. It is HTTP, our base URL, path is slash name h. Now nothing is exposed in the requested URL. Where were our data sent? Where did I send this? It was in the header. So slash h, first name is Kaustuv, slash h, oh my bad, slash hyphen h, last name Pandey, hyphen h, first name Kaustuv. So in the header it was encapsulated, not in the URL. So a journal person, when we should use a header, when we should use query parameter. So when we are using very journal data, or sending very journal data to the server, we can directly use query parameters. So if the value is exposed in the URL, we don't have any issues of data getting breached or surfaced, right? But when it's a important value, like value of a password or value of a key, something which is important, which should not be exposed to the browser or the world, which is in the URL, so you should encapsulate that in the header. So that then you should use header here, right? So this was all about get request, query parameters, default values in query parameters, and then headers in the get request. We also saw the Swagger UI, and we will be using this Swagger UI to test our endpoints. We will not be using our browser to put the URL here and then see what response is coming. We will be using this Swagger UI to test our endpoints. So this is same as the Postman we used to test other APIs. This is our own Postman, right? So that's all for this video. I hope you guys enjoy.